This is Open Air, a weekly show co-produced by Asheville FM and local groups working to improve the lives of people living in the Asheville area. Opinions expressed on Open Air do not represent Friends of Community Radio or Asheville FM. If your community group would like to produce a series or episode for broadcast on Open Air, email openair@ashevillefm.org.
Hey, welcome back to Life on Purpose. I'm Josh Hampton.
And I'm Kevin Mahoney.
And we are your hosts. Life on Purpose is brought to you by a partnership between Asheville FM and Sunrise Community for Recovery and Wellness. Sunrise is a nonprofit staffed entirely by certified peer support specialists who utilize their lived experience to provide authentic peer support, resource navigation, and education to individuals struggling with trauma that often leads to substance use and mental health issues. You can find out more at www.sunriseinasheville.org. So today we have with us a very special guest, Simona Rock, and Kevin actually made connection with Simona, knows Simona, and thought she'll be an excellent guest. So I'm going to let Kevin properly introduce her.
So let me give a little bit of an origin story to this episode because it's been fermenting for a while. I teach peer support for Sunrise, and in the process of crafting a peer support manual and talking about different populations, I was adding to our textbook, so to speak, and I was looking into diversity issues, and I'm looking into neurodiversity. I'm going, there's just a huge untapped, again, I think almost uneducated populace, but I didn't know a lot about it, so I went deep on it to start studying what I'm supposed to be talking about, in terms of a special population and why, and all the wherefores that go with it. So I reached out to a therapist friend of mine, and I said, I got this idea for one of our shows, and she said, well, I have a person that might be interesting to talk to. And she gave me Simona's number, and I honestly have not done a deep dive on personal biography, so I'm going to let that evolve as we talk, and we'll see where it goes. But the topic of today's show is neurodiversity culture and why it's a culture and all that means.
I'm excited.
Cool.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah, so should I ask the first questions? I was thinking you were going to lead into that.
I was going to get a little bit of bio information just to start things rolling.
Okay.
Sure thing.
Take it away.
Awesome. Tell us about all I know is that you're a nurse and a /nurse educator, and I'll let you take it from there.
Sure. So, hey, everyone. I, as a profession, I'm a holistic nurse. I work in cardiac rehab, which is kind of what I see as one of the last kind of spots for holistic nursing and, in the big system healthcare world. We get to teach lifestyle medicine. And so mental health has always been a part of me being a nurse and a nurse educator and a holistic nurse in general. And yeah, as far as neurodivergence goes, I've been on my own journey for the past, I think it's about 3 or 4 years since I've realized that I need to dig deeper and kind of understand myself more, because I am a coach. I'm a certified coach. So,
Okay.
If you're walking that path, then part of that is, uncovering yourself and doing the work for yourself. And so, the way it started, me uncovering my neurodivergence was actually, and this is a common story, is through the younger generations. So I don't have kids, but I have nephews, and they were diagnosed, one, like over a decade ago, and then the second one a few years ago. And you can't, as a healthcare worker, I remember there was like that era when they thought the vaccines were causing the autism, right? Remember that? And so as a healthcare, I was like, well, that's when I first was like, what is autism?
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know what it is. And then, just witnessing their diagnoses and like all the efforts that were being made to help them communicate. And it opened a big door. And also like TV actually helped me too. Like, I don't know if you remember, like Parenthood was Ray Romano played an adult that was uncovering for himself. And I was like, oh, this is such a great show. Like not like connecting it. Yeah. Like some reality shows that like the contestants were, newly diagnosed as adults. And I'm like, oh, I really relate. So, and then I just I knew it was so big that I was going to need to take time with it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I got to the door.
Going back to your nephews, what awakened that urge to uncover in you watching them?
Yeah, so it was actually, I love any creative competition show. So I'll just tell you, it was Glow Up, like season 2. And like they were 2 autistic folks on there. And I was actually visiting the older nephew like that summer, right? As it was all, how things just, conspire, and hadn't seen him in years. And when I walked into the room, he is higher needs, and so communication is a challenge. And so when I walked in, Mom wanted him to be like, hey, say hi to your Tia, and he was just lingering on the, at the doorway. And I'm like, it's fine. We've already had a whole conversation. It's great. And, and that's when I was like, oh, okay, I need to go ahead and get tested, like that's, and then it's all tied to like being an advocate for them. Right. And I don't know where I heard it, but there was like this whole talk of autism awareness, but more now acceptance, right? Like, and the whole notion, like the process I went through, which I think was, just what I needed at the time. I went ahead and got an autism coach. Jennifer Haar, I might be pronouncing that wrong, but that was really, really helpful for me because as a nurse, I wanted the facts, and I got the resources and happy to pass those along at some point. But
I'll remind you.
Yeah.
He will.
Right. And, I had already, I was coming out of my own trauma and working with a somatic therapist already. And so, like that's a pretty, when I got with Jen, she was like, okay, I'm glad you have one because I'd ask you to get one. Because so much of this process is a physical process. When you start to unmask, like I have had tensions and issues with my body and like my connection to the world around me for a long time, but I didn't know how to quantify it. And so now it's kind of like, I don't know. I feel like I'm unlocking the puzzle of me. And like, yeah, I think you're right that this does need to be more than one episode because I'm at the point right now where I'm like trying to unlock the physical aspects of this, like my hypermobility, my mast cell activation, and my POTS syndrome. So like that's something that's just clinically tied in.
Help me understand the disorder in terms of that of a spectrum disorder, because I come from, again, old school. I'm 69, and all I grew up was hearing somebody is autistic or somebody has Asperger's.
Yeah.
Then as I, again, unmasking and uncovering some more info, I was learning about spectrum disorders, just like schizophrenia has turned into a spectrum disorder situation.
Sure.
Tell us about that.
Well, I'm no expert, and I'd like to state that now. I'm just, I really as a holistic nurse, I will only speak to what I know, and if I don't know it, I'll tell you I don't know it. So as far as like what the criteria are, and like, you know, I can only speak for that from my own process, but essentially what we used to know as Asperger's, and we don't call it that anymore,
Right.
because of how like he didn't deserve to have that title. You know, you can think of it as high needs and low needs. There was one analogy or just description of autism that has stuck with me, because sound is very important to me, and a medicine. As a dancer, that's my stim. This is, you know, and I've realized over the years that I've been treating myself and, you know, like soothing myself my whole lifetime, but now I understand it as medicine, sort of. Where was I going with that? I kind of like lost track, but so you have higher needs, lower needs, and the idea is to think of it as like a soundboard, which, so it's cool being in here like right now, and like, but like, you know, like a recording studio, right? The like sea of dials, and that there's no two autistic people the same. So like it's all a tinkering on the dial. And I also, what I'm starting to see is that it's also where you are in your development, you know, that I am about to be 45. So like looking back, I see how, you know, and I've had to forgive myself for like, you know, I wasn't fully there, or like when others were, or, you know, with speech. And back then, you know, so it's the 80s, like I remember having like teachers corner me, like there was 3 teachers. And they were like, "Are you okay? Do you get food at home? You know, is anyone hurting you?" Like, and they really were concerned for me. And and I like could feel that. And I'm like, "No, I'm fine. You know, I'm just quiet." And, yeah. And like, you know, as you become a teenager, like you develop skills, like, and that's the coolest part, because as a holistic nurse, and a nurse educator, I've taught mindfulness for a long time. And so like, you know, yeah, I was into all that stuff when I was a teenager and doing yoga and meditation and, you know.
But that was self-directed though, right? You did that on your own?
Well, you know, I was exposed to it, you know, and I thought it was cool. And I, you know, dug in a little deeper through the people I knew and, you know, like partnerships I had. So, you know, one thing with meditation, you know, I always use the analogy that it's kind of like a hiking trail. You know, like especially with behaviors, like if you're really like at that beginning place of like the stages of change, right? Where you're like, how do I do this?
Problem? What?
Yeah, like I want to, but what? No direction, right? That like really raw feeling. To me, that's like, I got to scale a mountain, but there's no path. And you might get like scraped up and dirty, and like you might like break down and cry. It's like the walkabout, you know, like notion of like entering into your own.
It's a good metaphor.
Yeah. And so like, but the more you do it, then like there's a path. And like maybe over time you've like built a railing and maybe planted some flowers so that it becomes easier, and then it's your go-to instead of like your hurdle.
What did school feel like to you? Again, when
As a little or
it goes as detailed as you want to
yeah. So I'll just go the route, you know, as a little kid, you know, I would just kind of remember feeling just, you know, like a low level stun, overwhelm, like, and also like very observant, you know, I do feel like, you know, my nephew who is not that verbal is a genius and in the Mensa Society, like, you know, so like there's this wall that, you know, you're fully in the moment, but there's just like sensations, it's different for everybody, but are things that just kind of keep you a little bit closer in. But I feel like as I got older, I will say puberty sucked. like, and, I do, like, for me, part of uncovering and working with Jen, who's, I don't know how you would say it, but Jen's also a coach for, like, the queer community. And I really work through how I identify with her and realizing how it's tied to my neurodivergence heavily. Because, like, when you get boobs and all of a sudden, like, I feel how people are. I can feel all of you in this room, and you're all lovely humans. And
I'm not. He is.
Well,
I don't know. Sometimes
it feels good in here. But like, so like, like think of a cat call. Like if I get cat called, like there, I get like a tension throughout my body. If people are eyeing me across the room, and and I'm a performer, so like I can handle it, but there's a sensitivity there, we'll say it that way. And so I generally like distance, and and that matters for me. So high school kind of sucked, and I think I was in scenes where I could be more tomboyish, and that was okay, and no one cared. And we didn't have those words right in the 90s.
Tomboy.
Yeah, I was a hippie and a punk. Like that's all that mattered. Right? Like that was it. And which is interesting, right? That I remember you went from punk to hippie, and that was like controversial back then. And I did that throughout. I just bounced through scenes to kind of find what I liked. And I think I did that with a lot of different things in life. I never had a group that I could say, I belong here. And that, religiously, like I was raised Catholic, and I left that as a teen, but then I tried the meditation, and then I tried Krishna, and I tried like all these things because I am very spiritual. That is, I feel also tied to my autism. In the sense of how I am tuned, my frequency. Like one thing I haven't mentioned, I don't know if you're ready for it. Yeah. So I'm an energy worker, and energy workers also, we work with the other side, put it that way. And so, these tensions, these things that I didn't understand as a little kid are tied to that. And I suffered some physical trauma from myself being afraid of those things when I was like 7 to 12. And then as a teenager, I just like, I don't know what it was. It was like, that was like X-Files era. So I was like, aliens. I was like, I don't know. But in my 20s, I worked at this esoteric shop, and I realized, okay, like there's a lot out there, and started uncovering that for myself. But it's been a slow process. And this is where I'll bring him in. But I can't, for certain reasons, mention names. But I'll just say that I had a really wonderful mentor that came into my life when I, right as I was gearing up to get assessed, which is like a 3 appointment like scenario and takes weeks, and that was the wildest thing I think I've ever done. Even though I prepared, I froze, I masked, and and anyway, I got through it. But I had this person come into my life and mentor me through. And recently they passed. And
sorry to hear that.
Yeah, they had a wonderful life. But now it's like, oh boy, because as what I refer to myself as a medium, now I have them on my side back here. And it's like just so wild that the timing. I literally found out after I agreed, that we like scheduled for today. I don't know if you guys know what today is, by the way.
I do not.
It's 3 days after my birthday.
3 days after your birthday. That's awesome. Happy birthday.
Thanks.
It's Lionsgate.
Lionsgate.
Yeah. I'm not like fully like, I can't give you the details, but I do know it's tied to like Sirius B, which is a star, and like the pyramids, things line up, big portal energy. This is a time of manifestation, and like
Not the movie company.
Lionsgate now, not the movie company.
It's
Funny you mentioned though, but I am making a movie with a wild collective that speaks to this whole transformation process.
We'll come back to that.
Yeah.
Um,
So school, it was a slow discovery of self.
so this assessment you had to go through is not too long ago?
Like literally started a year ago. So August, September last
so
year.
you have gone through your whole adult life undiagnosed per se, but you knew something was up and you were forming your own coping skills?
So 3 years ago, 3 years ago is when I decided I wanted to get assessed for professional reasons, but I wanted to take my time. Maybe 5 years ago, I started suspecting that I myself was autistic. My whole life has been a coping mechanism. You know, the notion is that if you are on the autism spectrum, that you suffer PTSD to a varied degree because of the sensory aspects of it.
Being overwhelmed by stuff?
Like, I mean, in the womb, just like, so essentially, like, as I understand it, and I'm sure there's somebody that could speak more to the like physical aspects of how things are affected, but I've heard it discuss that, and there's a recent study out there, but we essentially, our nerves don't prune like other people's nerve, like, and so we have like an excess of receivers, and so where that kind of pops up is different for different people.
So I've heard that water sensations, or you get under showers and things hitting your skin and sounds.
It's different for everybody. Like I'm a mermaid. Like I I was a swimmer. I live in the water.
Okay.
Like, so that's, water is healing for me, but it could, be painful for somebody else. Sounds, tastes. So there's like, every sense can be like augmented and, affected to a varied degree. But I also think it's something that, is, adaptable again to a varied degree. And then, when you get into situations where there's a physical aspect, and that's where, whether or not I can be independent or not, hold a job. But I recently, this week, I went part-time because I realized that I'd rather like eat rice and beans and just kind of like live frugally than like overwork my system. I need more time to meditate and to cook the right foods for me. And
Do you tend towards overwork?
No, I think in the past, for sure. I think recently I've just been coming to terms with, like, this was always the plan essentially, but lately I've been feeling it's like a physical exhaustion that like keeps me from doing the like executive function things that I need to do. And so then I always feel like I'm chasing that stuff instead of like in charge of it. Yeah.
I have a whole list of things that I'm building up here.
I got one. When you first started talking, you mentioned you had an autism coach, and that was suggested to you to get one. Could you talk a little bit more about what that looks like, how that's been beneficial for you?
Yeah. So, Jen Har, Harr, she
Is she independent, or is she with Autism
Spectrum
Society?
Squared is that part of it I'd have to look it up and reference it, but I actually got her name through my somatic therapist, Monica LeBlanc, which has helped me over the past 4 years kind of uncover all of this. This was all, as most things, this came from a big breakup, where I like kind of was left with myself and trying to make sense of my past. And so at first, not even on the radar, I was just like trying to work through, the emotional aspects of all that. But then you mentioned overwork. So like after I left that relationship, I realized my job, for me, it would be a lovely job for somebody else, but my job at that time was not healthy for me. And so then I looked for avenues out of that, and this is like coming out of COVID. Like COVID destroyed me, and COVID was something that helped me understand that like I have needs. So if you can imagine, generally speaking, folks, I think there's like some commonalities that autism likes a pattern, to know what to expect. We like our foods, like things make us feel safe or unsafe, and we tend towards those that make us feel safe. And so COVID, as a nurse educator, was like,
really safe.
My goodness. Like, I just felt the weight of the world on my shoulders.
Oh,
and I was like, I need time out. And I, used my PTSD diagnosis, which I had at that time, to take a week to just be like, oh my, this is like
were you
end of March, right?
Were you in person, or were you doing Zoom?
I was working. This was a big deal. And so, but when I came back from that, I was ready to engage. I just it was just too much too soon, and it happened too fast. And I could not know what I needed to do for, the staff and for the general public. And because we were in that discovery period and I didn't have the facts, which is something that was just too much for me to navigate at the time. So
a regimen, a regimented schedule is your friend?
Oh, no. I mean, that is just, how do I say it? In nursing and nursing education, going back to I only speak to what I know, and what I know is based on study and fact. So it's just being so out of that box at that moment globally was too much for me to compute, and
got it.
I was like, essentially, and by the time I got back, it was just a week. We had figured out a lot, and enough for me to be like, okay, I know what to do now. Without the stress of so one thing, being an energy healer, I'm, that empathicness is, not something you can turn off, especially when it's dialed up so that intensely. I was feeling everybody's paranoia. People were melting down left and right, and I'm the one who's supposed to be holding the information. And there was none. So, overwhelmed.
I'm going to go right in the middle of my questions here. Gender identity and neurodiversity. During my research, there was a linkage. Can you help us explore that?
Well, I can only speak for my own, story, I guess, but I do know that there is a link. So, the different names, who knows, but essentially, my experience with it is, like I said, when I was a teenage and all of a sudden I was developing and I was getting attention that I wasn't really ready for. I would, wear, a sweatshirt and, boys' shoes, I always, and I just felt more comfortable being a little bit more tough in the world. I remember in high school, I made friends with someone who was younger than me, and they admitted that they were terrified of me because I would walk the halls at that time I was a little kind of, I don't know, just this little, all into the Cure and dark and stormy.
Oh my goodness.
And so. And then, but, she soon realized that underneath I'm just like a bubbly unicorn, so.
Kevin, I see you got a whole list of questions.
I'm
over
just
here.
writing and
Oh, yes, I didn't really answer that. But so then over time, I just realized I've always played with gender. I in my outfits and pushed, and, for me, when I started this process and was looking back and, talking about what makes me feel safe, what makes me feel unsafe, and just me as a performer and stuff, it's like, I love my body. I feel great in it and very thankful for it, but there's just more to who I am than that physicalness. And that ties to just spirituality for me. I just feel like we're beings of light, and, you know, and that's not unique to me necessarily, but that's where I just choose to identify more. But, you know, being what I like to do and why my pronouns are she, they is, you know, I see for folks of my generation, I see for just people in the community and, you know, where I work and the patients that, you know, I push the obvious, but like I'm there to work with you on like how to bridge that gap of understanding. Like because I didn't have those markers as a kid, you know, or in my 20s or 30s even, like I'm okay. Like I know who I am, like, and I want you to tell me who you see. So I want, you know, just, you know, and a lot of times people don't say anything, and that's okay. But I think there's in that silent acceptance, and that's what I try to do in healthcare. You know, if you are queer and you come into my world, you see me right away, and like we don't have to say anything. And but it's just a little, you know, just having that presence is kind of where.
Would you remind me of the low-high terminology used? Because in substance use, and mental health, we I've shied away from saying low functioning or high functioning because it's kind of disparaging.
You know, and I think those terms are ever changing. So this is the last time I, you know, worked with anybody. It's been a minute, but like high needs and low needs.
High needs and low needs.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
What's high needs look like?
So, you know, I mean, at the extreme, not being able to communicate and having physical limitation, having, you know, it could be dietary extreme issues, or like I was speaking about the chemical sensitivities and the hypermobility issues. Like that's my own experience, but I think there's so many more things out there that, you know, like you mentioned, you know, I can't go out in the rain, or, you know, like, and, you know, there's a difference between, oh, I don't like going out in the rain, I don't like how it feels, versus I cannot, you know. So I think it's going to be so different for each person. And that was the really beautiful part about being assessed, because you're essentially like having somebody really hear your story and then give you back, like, you know, this sort of map for yourself is kind of how it felt to me.
Did you feel validated, or?
Yeah, there's like this grief that happens though, I think, as an adult, because, you know, when you go through life and you're like, oh, I didn't do this because of that, or I didn't, you know, my parents this or that. Like, I remember, like, you know, for me, I don't mind sharing, but, you know, I'm a dancer, and my mom put me in tap, you know, ballet and jazz at like 5, and I had fine dancing, but then we had to say our names to a group of like 25 people and I froze and I never like went back. And so like, but when I was older, I was like, why didn't my mother, you know, make me go? And like we talked about it. She's like, there was no way I would have ever gotten you in the door. Like, you know, like I just didn't remember that part of it.
So was there like an unmasking with your parents too? Did they have to unmask their feelings that they?
No, you know, I think when I started this journey, it connected a lot of dots for both of them, you know. I don't think my dad would mind me telling you. Like, I know that I can see the chain, like, and, you know, a lot of what I do, like I'm writing a book where the main character goes through the process of, you know, assessment as an adult one, you know, or it's after that fact. And
all right, I want an advanced copy, okay? Advanced copy here.
Yeah, no, I know.
Signed advanced copy.
Not a freebie, you know. I'll share it with Josh.
I need some time, but yes, but yeah. And, you know, that I gave my mom a lot of answers, but it's also given me, like, you know, there's that ancestral healing that happens, I think, when you do any kind of mental health work or recovery, right? Because these things are, you know, genetically tied for some of us,
inclined,
at least.
Yeah. What do you know about substance use and linking with a spectrum disorder?
You know, I don't know the research.
I'm going to do that research then.
Yeah, I'd be interested, but I have had people, like, I've had, you know, varied folks from the mental health. I'm really open about it, socially on social media and the whole thing, the journey. And so people do message me, and a lot of healthcare workers wanting to like explore that link a little bit more. So I think there's like a whole, we talked about getting like think tanks together.
I was thinking about thinking about peer support as a help for, not a help, as a ally for spectrum disorder stuff.
Yeah, well, what I've had is like a lot of adults also say, "Hey, you're helping me." Like, and so even just sharing story, right?
Exactly.
Which is so much the recovery world,
That lived
right?
experience.
Yeah. So, just that knowledge that you're not alone. And one of the fun things, looking back, was as I've like, oh, I'm gonna have to tell my friends. The funnest part, and this, I guess there's a reason behind this, but they're like, me too. So like we found each other regardless.
There's a lot of
yeah
online, not official quizzes and surveys that people take. In fact, we were riding to Greensboro, and the car took an autism survey spectrum, and the numbers were, again, they varied, but we're like,
and this is a good point to mention too, that we're just talking autism because that's my story, but like neurodivergence is a whole big umbrella term for a whole lot of other stuff.
Right.
Yeah. So, ADHD, sensitivity disorder, and I don't know all of them, so I apologize now, but like, I
just found out within the last 2 years that ADHD, fits in neurodivergence.
Yes. Yeah. Some of my besties, and it's fun with us together because we have different, we help each other along, they're so quick, like on the phone to figure out where we're going and what, what direction we need to take.
We were brainstorming the other day about the sudden onrush, it seems, of diagnosis of some kind of ADD or ADHD. And again, throwing out our non-clinical, non-scientific opinions, I'm wondering if screen usage or that kind of hyper-stimulation has something to do with it, because it seems like it's all over the place now, and it didn't used to be 10 years ago, again, in my sphere of existence.
I was just talking about this with someone the other day. I don't know about, particularly ADHD or any, but it's got to have an effect on
it seems like everybody's on Adderall or everybody's on some kind of stimulant. But again, that's just throwing it out there because I like to stir the pot.
That's definitely something to uncover, dig deeper, into. But
Pot stirred, sir.
Pot stirred.
Yeah.
Have you seen a movie called I Saw the TV Glow?
No.
I watched it at the behest of a friend and reading some really good critiques, and I watched it and I felt like I was walking in a dream with the two protagonists. It's a young people. I'm getting this real chilled feeling because now I'm starting to realize like maybe this was a film about autism spectrum stuff and I wasn't looking at it through the right lens, but I'm going to have to revisit it because I was going like, this sucks. This isn't Buffy the Vampire Slayer like I thought it was going to be. I was supposed to be, or a David Lynch movie or a David Cronenberg body horror movie. This was like two young people and one had some gender identity questions, but they were in this different dimension. They called it the pink opaque.
Okay.
And I'm thinking, I wonder if this was a metaphor about autism spectrum stuff. Now,
I have to watch it.
Yeah, I'd love to hear your opinion about it.
Well, and talking mental health, I have really always, one of my self-soothings is movies, and like when you can't access emotions yourself, like it's very powerful to, use that entertainment. You said David Lynch. I mean, you're speaking to my heart. Right?
Twin Peaks.
Yeah, of course.
Question about resources and books. Let me start with the resources. The only resource I know in town that I would, as a peer support, if a parent called me or or somebody with autism spectrum disorder who's in discovery, is the Autism Society. I know there's more. Where is there?
Sure, yeah, and I'm unfortunately, like, as far as like, I think it'd be at this day and age, for a child going through your PCP and getting they're pretty well tapped in. For adults, it's a little harder. So being in healthcare, I kind of went straight to the professionals for this for me, but I know there's a lot more out there as far as the community goes. And, as far as, maybe that's like episode 2, full resources page, and we'll do the work, and get it all together. But, and that's actually kind of where I want to go with things too. Like what I do with, my dance is, I do kind of, it's dance meditation, but it's just essentially tying my energy work. And, I try to keep it neurodivergent safe, but it's just really 2 rules. It's, touch requires consent, and laughter's only through joy. So like no one can be ridiculed or, touched if they don't want to, and so, and then it's pretty, wacky and wild beyond that. But it's really just a place to be free in your movement and whatever that means for you that day. But I would love to bring it more out to the neurodivergent, community, like especially, higher needs folks, and just really start working music medicine a little bit more and movement medicine.
So, I've integrated into the peer support training, TED Talk on a young person with neurodivergence, and he's a young white male. He says, everybody thinks that people with autism look like me. He was very pale. He was kind of thin. He spoke very rigidly, but very intelligently. But he described his condition, which I thought was interesting. He goes, I have a zillion emotions within me, but I only have 2 filters that let out certain emotional spectrums. Like, he goes, my laughter doesn't sound to me like other people's laughter, but it is. I just can't get it out through this filter of whatever. Does that resonate at all?
It's not really my story, but that makes sense because expression is a big part of this. And that's a whole, so the book, and I'm sorry I don't have the book, we'll get the author's name, but it was called, I Think I Might Be Autistic. And you look up for that on Amazon. It has these colored pencils, and really all it is a pamphlet of the criteria. So, if you can read, you can assess for yourself, do I relate? And it breaks it down into categories. So a lot of what you're talking about, these varied sensory situations for folks like the rain or the, it's all broken down, and, when you're assessed, it's interesting, whether you look autistic or not. I had a really interesting experience with it, in the sense that, where I was assessed, there was a student doing the middle appointment is all the puzzles and the intelligence testing and everything. And it's a lot of questionnaires, and so this student was interviewing me and administering the testing, and was asked of them as I left the room, just cold, whether or not they thought I was autistic, and they did not, because I made eye contact and was able to communicate in a clear way. And that's why they're a student, and that's why my assessor brought it up, was to be I think she didn't say that, but as a nurse educator, I know I'm educating them. Hey, look at this thing, what do you think? It's just a moment that hopefully I like to think that helped develop their practice.
But the light went on a little bit.
Yeah, because I said, we nursing helped me tremendously with my communication. Before nursing, I would not, my first job as an NA was to be a sitter. So I sat in a room for 12 hours. And
my goodness.
So, and sometimes that patient, was sleeping and there's family in the room for hours. So I had to learn how to chit chat.
Right.
Wow.
And get used to it. So
you mentioned that you kind of suspected that something was up for about 3 years before you actually found out. One, do you wish that you would have went through the process sooner to be screened? And 2, do you have any words of encouragement or thoughts for other adults that may be wondering if they could be autistic or neurodivergent of some kind?
Yeah, good question. So, I'm kind of the belief that like things happen in their divine time. So there is but you hit on something really important that ties in what I would like speak to anyone trying to assess is that the grief is real. Like there's going to be an exuberance with being like, oh, okay, like this is why, and that feels so lovely. And, but there's like also this coming to where you have to integrate your past lived experience with where your new understanding, and that's some work, and that's the unmasking, and learning how, like right now in my stage, I'm like learning, how to be in the world, and ask for what I need where I didn't know I needed it, in the past, or that it was something that I could ask for. You want to know the really funny example of this is, we at work, healthcare, we have to do our modules and, how do we treat everybody and all that stuff. And it was like, this one was like, be kind, essentially to your neurodivergent coworkers and, let them, ask for what they need. And, and, I work in a gym essentially. Okay. We're work out people that are recovering from, health issues. So, we have music on all the time. And for me, I love music, but I cannot, and I'm so sorry, but like I cannot stand AC/DC. Like I really love the music is great, but I cannot with the vocals. It just like, that's where I start to like anything else that's happening in the moment. Like I'm gonna shut down if I hear that voice. So like it just.
So who do you like?
Oh, I love everything. I mean, and again, it's just, and it's not a judgment call at all. It's just literally what the voice does to my nervous system is that I cannot. I'm sorry. So that was what I asked for when we did that.
We're getting the sign to
the high sign,
the twirly sign.
Speaking of voices, you got Shirley Manson from Garbage.
Oh my God! Well, yeah.
That's one of my favorite soothing voices. That's my calm down drive music.
Garbage.
That's your calm down.
Some of it.
Yeah. Okay.
Her croony stuff, not the techno stuff, but it's it's funny.
What's wrong with the techno stuff?
Nothing. That's a time and place. Okay. Not for me driving though.
I get it.
How much time do we have?
One more question, I believe.
Okay. I got plenty more.
Yeah. Well. Right. Can just like roll through it and see what you land on.
No. So there's been talk of a part 2.
I heartily say yay if Simone is up for it.
Yeah, well, this is just kind of my life calling and all, so,
All right, well.
I will research and we can reconvene. Do you have any sunrise updates?
Sunrise updates. Besides being like the best peer-ran organization on the planet.
This side of the mountains.
Yeah. Well, I said planet, but
okay, there you go.
For sure, this side of the mountains, definitely. Maybe the Mississippi. Cool. No sunrise updates. Our peer support conference passed. It went really well.
It did.
Nothing that I can think of. Can you think of anything that our listeners would want to know about?
Our peer support training class is extended all the way into December now. We're going to be teaching twice a month at different locations, mostly in Asheville, but Cherokee in September, Transylvania County, Brevard next week. We'll have a whole week. And then end of the year, we're going to do a weekend class. So for people who can't make Monday through Friday at the Veterans Restoration Quarters on Tunnel Road.
Okay.
So cool trainings coming up. We have Peer University ongoing, which is peer apprenticeship.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. So if you guys also, in the meantime, until we do episode 2, if you want to reach out or you want to explore this on the dance floor even, every Sunday, 2 to 4 at Haw Creek Commons, I
My friend does Pilates there.
Yeah, it's a fun community. There's a lot that goes on there.
Okay.
But yeah, Sundays 2 to 4 there. It's sliding scale and free if it needs to be.
Cool.
And it's just an open space to kind of work through the physicality of life. And the music is very varied. So it can be like weird sounds to, club music to rock and roll from,
ballroom,
everything.
Yeah.
And there's no AC/DC though. I'm so
All right,
sorry.
All right.
Yeah.
You get over that disappointment.
One thing I did want to throw in here real quick, I wanted to plug the National Speakers Association Western North Carolina chapter. We have an event coming up on Tuesday, September 24th of this year from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. called The Big Speak. It'll be at Highland Brewing Center, and if you're interested in checking out some of our speakers, you can go to wncspeakers.com. You can learn more about the Big Speak event, buy your tickets there. If you're interested in sponsorship for the Big Speak, go check it out, and we hope to see you out there.
That's all I got.
All right.
Thank you, Simona. We'll see you again.
Thank you so much, Simona.
Yeah, sounds great. Thanks for having me.
All right.
Cool.
Y'all
It's been
stay
fun.
blessed.